The morning of my wedding, I discovered my dress hanging in tatters, slashed beyond repair by scissors that had clearly been wielded with deliberate cruelty. My mother-in-law stood in my childhood bedroom doorway, her face twisted with satisfaction as she surveyed the destruction of what should have been the most important garment of my life. But when I walked down that aisle 12 hours later, every guest gasped, not at a ruined bride, but at something far more powerful than any dress could ever be. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The call came at 6:47 in the morning, jerking me from the deepest sleep I had managed in weeks. My phone buzzed against the nightstand in my hotel room at the Grandview Inn, where I had been staying per tradition to avoid seeing my fiancé Marcus before our ceremony. The caller identification displayed my mother's number, but when I answered with a groggy greeting, the voice that responded belonged to someone I had hoped never to hear from again. "Sarah dear, I am afraid there has been a small incident with your wedding preparations." The syrupy tone belonged to Vivian Hartwell, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, whose idea of assistance typically involved creating problems that only she could solve. "You really should come to your parents' house immediately. There seems to be some confusion about your dress." My stomach dropped with the instinctive dread that accompanies phone calls that begin with false sweetness and vague references to incidents. I had spent 18 months planning this wedding, coordinating every detail with the meticulous attention that my career as an event coordinator had trained me to apply to high-stakes celebrations. The dress alone had required 6 months of consultations, fittings, and adjustments to achieve the exact vision I had carried since childhood. "What kind of confusion, Vivian? Is my mother there?" I struggled to keep my voice calm while my mind raced through potential disasters. The dress had been safely stored in my childhood bedroom closet at my parents' house in Maplewood, carefully preserved in acid-free tissue paper, and a museum-quality garment bag that had cost more than most people spent on their entire wedding outfit. Your mother stepped out to collect the flowers from the delivery truck. I offered to help with some last-minute preparations, as any caring mother-in-law would do. However, I discovered some issues with your dress that require immediate attention. The pause that followed felt deliberately calculated to increase my anxiety. "Perhaps it would be better if you came to see for yourself, rather than attempting to discuss this over the telephone." The formal language and carefully measured tone triggered every alarm bell that 2 years of dealing with Vivian had installed in my psychological early warning system. She possessed a remarkable talent for creating crises that positioned her as both the cause and the solution, manipulating situations to ensure that her preferences prevailed while maintaining plausible deniability about her true intentions. I dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the zipper. The drive from the hotel to my parents' house normally took 15 minutes, but I made it in 9, running 3 red lights and exceeding the speed limit by margins that would have horrified my typically law-abiding personality. The entire journey, I attempted to convince myself that Vivian had discovered a minor issue that could be addressed with quick alterations or emergency repairs. My parents' house stood on Elm Street in the historic district of Maplewood, a colonial revival that my father had spent decades restoring to its original 1920s grandeur. The morning light caught the leaded glass windows and highlighted the careful landscaping that my mother maintained with the same attention to detail she applied to her career as a high school principal. This house had been my sanctuary throughout childhood, the place where I had dreamed about my future wedding while playing dress-up in my grandmother's vintage gowns. I used my key to enter through the front door, calling out for my mother as I climbed the familiar staircase to the second floor. The silence that greeted me felt ominous, broken only by the sound of my footsteps on the hardwood floors that my father had refinished the previous summer. My childhood bedroom door stood slightly ajar, revealing a slice of the pale yellow walls that had remained unchanged since my high school graduation. Pushing open the door, I found Vivian standing beside my open closet with her back toward me, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She wore one of her signature tailored suits in navy blue, the kind of outfit that conveyed authority and respectability while concealing the calculating nature that I had gradually learned to recognize. Her posture suggested satisfaction, the bearing of someone who had accomplished exactly what she had set out to achieve. "Vivian, what are you doing in my room? Where is my dress?" My voice carried an edge of panic that I could not suppress, despite my attempts to maintain composure. The garment bag that should have contained my wedding dress lay empty on the bed, its protective tissue paper scattered across the comforter like evidence of a crime scene. She turned slowly, her expression arranged in the mask of sympathetic concern that she deployed whenever her actions required justification. "Sarah, I am truly sorry that you had to discover this, but I felt it was my responsibility as Marcus's mother to address a situation that could have caused significant embarrassment for our family." "What situation? What are you talking about?" I moved toward the closet, searching for any sign of my dress among the hanging garments that represented decades of my life. Birthday dresses from childhood celebrations, graduation gowns from academic milestones, professional attire from job interviews and important meetings, but nothing resembling the ivory silk creation that had consumed months of planning and financial resources. Vivian gestured toward the floor of the closet, where I discovered what remained of my wedding dress. The fabric lay in carefully cut strips, each piece no larger than a dinner napkin, arranged in neat piles that suggested systematic destruction rather than accidental damage. The beadwork that had taken artisans hundreds of hours to complete sparkled among the ruins like stars scattered across a battlefield. The sight hit me with physical force, doubling me over as if I had been punched in the stomach. This dress had represented more than clothing. It embodied months of anticipation, financial sacrifice, and dreams about the most important day of my life. The designer had created it specifically for my measurements and preferences, incorporating vintage lace from my grandmother's wedding dress and hand-sewn pearls that my mother had saved from her own wedding ensemble. "My God, Vivian, what have you done?" The words emerged as barely more than a whisper, my voice failing as my mind struggled to process the magnitude of the destruction. I knelt beside the remains, running my fingers over silk that had cost $3,000 and represented countless hours of skilled craftsmanship. "Sarah, I understand that you are upset, but you must recognize that I acted in your best interests." Vivian's tone carried no trace of remorse or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "That dress was entirely inappropriate for a woman marrying into the Hartwell family. The neckline was far too revealing, the styling too modern and attention-seeking. It would have reflected poorly on our family's reputation and values." The explanation struck me as even more devastating than the destruction itself. Vivian had not acted impulsively or accidentally. She had planned this attack with careful deliberation, waiting until the night before the wedding when replacement would be impossible. She had calculated exactly how to inflict maximum damage, while maintaining her position as the concerned matriarch protecting family standards. "You destroyed my wedding dress because you disapproved of the style?" I stood slowly, my legs trembling with shock and rage. "This was not your decision to make. This was not your dress to destroy. This was not your wedding to control. Everything about this wedding affects the Hartwell family reputation, including the appearance of the bride. Marcus is a partner at one of the most prestigious law firms in the region. He has political aspirations that require careful attention to public perception. I could not allow him to begin his marriage with a wife who displayed herself inappropriately." The conversation was proceeding exactly as I should have anticipated based on 2 years of similar encounters with Vivian's controlling behavior. She possessed an remarkable ability to reframe her destructive actions as necessary interventions, positioning herself as the rational adult protecting others from their own poor judgment. Every interaction followed the same pattern. She would create a crisis, then present herself as the solution, while painting her victims as unreasonable for objecting to her methods. I thought about Marcus, probably still sleeping peacefully in his apartment across town, unaware that his mother had just sabotaged what should have been the happiest day of our lives. I thought about the 200 guests who would arrive at Sacred Heart Church in 6 hours, expecting to witness a traditional wedding ceremony. I thought about the reception venue, the photographer, the musicians, all the vendors who had coordinated their schedules around this single day that Vivian had just destroyed with calculated cruelty. "Marcus will be furious when he learns what you have done," I said, though even as I spoke the words I wondered whether my assessment was accurate. Marcus had demonstrated a troubling pattern of deferring to his mother's preferences, particularly when her demands conflicted with my wishes. He had grown up accepting her authority in all matters related to family decisions, and I had gradually learned that challenging Vivian meant challenging the entire family dynamic that had shaped his identity. Marcus will understand that I acted to protect his future. He has always trusted my judgment about matters that could affect his career and social standing. A wife who respects family values will appreciate guidance from her husband's mother. Vivian moved toward the bedroom door, apparently considering the conversation concluded. I have taken the liberty of arranging an alternative dress that would be more suitable for today's ceremony. It belonged to my mother and represents the kind of dignity that our family has always maintained. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The presumption left me speechless for several seconds. Vivian had destroyed my carefully chosen dress, then unilaterally decided that I would wear her mother's wedding gown instead, as if my preferences and personal agency were irrelevant factors in my own wedding ceremony. She had reduced me to a mannequin whose primary function was displaying family heritage rather than expressing individual identity. I will not be wearing your mother's dress. I will not be allowing you to dictate what I wear to my own wedding. And I will not be pretending that this destruction was anything other than deliberate sabotage designed to assert your control over my marriage before it even begins. Vivian's expression hardened, revealing the steel beneath her carefully maintained facade of maternal concern. Sarah, I had hoped that you would demonstrate the maturity necessary for marriage into a family with our standards and expectations. Your reaction suggests that you may not be prepared for the responsibilities that come with being Marcus's wife. The threat was unmistakable. Vivian was suggesting that my response to her sabotage would determine whether I was worthy of marrying her son, as if my objection to having my wedding dress destroyed demonstrated character flaws rather than reasonable boundaries. She had created a situation where any protest against her actions would be interpreted as evidence that I lacked the submissive attitude she expected from Marcus's wife. I heard my mother's car pulling into the driveway, followed by the sound of the front door opening and her voice calling my name. The approaching footsteps on the staircase would bring another person into this crisis, someone who might provide support, or might simply add to the chaos depending on how much information Vivian had already shared about her version of events. Sarah, what are you doing here? I thought you were staying at the hotel until this afternoon. My mother appeared in the bedroom doorway carrying an armload of white roses and baby's breath, her face bright with the excitement that had characterized her demeanor throughout the wedding planning process. Vivian said she wanted to help with some final preparations, which was so thoughtful of her to offer. My mother's gaze moved from my face to Vivian's carefully neutral expression, then down to the destruction scattered across my bedroom floor. I watched her excitement transform into confusion, then horror, as she recognized the silk fabric and beadwork that she had admired during countless fittings and discussions about wedding day details. What happened to Sarah's dress? Did something fall? Was there an accident? My mother set down the flowers and knelt beside the ruined fabric, her hands hovering over the pieces as if she could somehow reassemble them through careful handling. Mrs. Patterson, I am afraid I felt compelled to address some concerns about the appropriateness of Sarah's chosen attire. As Marcus's mother, I have certain responsibilities regarding family standards that I could not ignore. Vivian's explanation carried the same tone of reasonable authority that she had used with me, as if destroying someone else's property were a normal expression of family values. My mother looked up from the destroyed dress with an expression I had rarely seen during my 26 years of life. Her face had gone completely pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks, and her voice, when she spoke, carried a controlled fury that reminded me of how she addressed students who had committed serious infractions at her school. You destroyed my daughter's wedding dress? You came into my home and deliberately cut up a $3,000 garment that took months to create? My mother stood slowly, her hands clenched at her sides. What gave you the right to make that decision? What gave you the authority to destroy something that belonged to someone else? Quote, the confrontation between my mother and Vivian created a moment of clarity that cut through the emotional shock I had been experiencing since discovering the destruction. This was not a miscommunication or a well-intentioned mistake that had gone wrong. This was deliberate sabotage by someone who viewed my wedding as an opportunity to establish dominance over my future marriage and relationship with her son. Standing in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of Vivian's calculated cruelty, I understood that this moment would define not only my wedding day, but the entire trajectory of my marriage. If I allowed her to control this situation through destruction and manipulation, I would be establishing a precedent that would govern every significant decision throughout my relationship with Marcus. If I submitted to wearing her mother's dress and pretending that her actions were acceptable, I would be surrendering my right to equal partnership in my own marriage. The decision that crystallized in that moment surprised me with its clarity and strength. I would not allow Vivian's sabotage to derail my wedding or dictate my response to her manipulation. I would not wear her mother's dress or accept her version of appropriate behavior for Marcus's wife. I would not begin my marriage by demonstrating that destruction and control were effective methods for managing our family relationships. I looked at my mother, whose expression of righteous anger on my behalf provided the support I needed to trust my own judgment about how to proceed. I looked at the destroyed dress, which represented not just financial loss but an attempt to erase my personal agency from my own wedding ceremony. I looked at Vivian, whose satisfied expression revealed her confidence that she had successfully established the power dynamic she wanted to govern my marriage. The wedding was scheduled to begin in 6 hours, and I had just lost the dress that was supposed to be the centerpiece of the most important day of my life. But standing in that room, surrounded by evidence of deliberate sabotage, I realized that Vivian had given me something far more valuable than she had taken away. She had shown me exactly who she was and what she was willing to do to maintain control over her son's life and marriage. The question now was not how to replace the dress or manage the immediate crisis. The question was how to respond in a way that honored my own dignity while sending a clear message about the kind of marriage I intended to have and the kind of treatment I was prepared to accept from my new family. The answer to that question would determine not only what happened in the next 6 hours, but what kind of life I would be able to build with the man I loved despite his mother's determination to control our future. After Vivian departed with her characteristic air of satisfied authority, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the devastating remains of my wedding dress, I found myself sitting on my childhood bed, facing the most complex crisis of my adult life. My mother had followed Vivian downstairs to ensure she actually left the premises, her voice carrying through the house in clipped, professional tones that indicated she was exercising tremendous restraint to maintain civility. The silence that followed Vivian's departure felt different from ordinary quiet. It carried weight, demanding that I confront the full magnitude of what had just occurred and what it meant for my future. I spread the fragments of silk and lace across my comforter, attempting to assess whether any portion might be salvageable through emergency alterations or creative reconstruction. The systematic nature of the cuts made clear that Vivian had worked methodically to ensure complete destruction, leaving no piece large enough to serve as the foundation for repairs. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus, sent from his apartment where he remained blissfully unaware of the morning's developments. "Good morning, beautiful. 7 hours until I get to call you my wife. Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle today. Love you more than words can express." Quote, the message, which should have filled me with joy and anticipation, instead highlighted the impossible situation his mother had created. How would I explain that his mother had destroyed my wedding dress without destroying his relationship with her? How would I manage his reaction to learning that the woman who had raised him was capable of such calculated cruelty? I called my best friend and maid of honor, Rachel Martinez, who answered on the first ring despite the early hour. Rachel worked as a trauma nurse at Maplewood General Hospital, which had trained her to respond to emergencies with calm efficiency and practical problem-solving skills. Her voice carried the alert clarity of someone accustomed to managing crises that required immediate action. "Sarah, what's wrong? You sound terrible, and you're supposed to be glowing with bridal happiness right now." Rachel's ability to read emotional undertones through phone conversations had developed through years of supporting me through various personal and professional challenges. "Did something happen with the final preparations?" "Rachel, I need you to sit down. Vivian destroyed my wedding dress. She cut it into pieces last night while I was at the hotel." The words sounded surreal as I spoke them, as if I were describing events from someone else's life rather than my own wedding day crisis. The silence that followed lasted long enough for me to wonder whether the call had been disconnected. When Rachel finally responded, Her voice carried the controlled fury of someone who had witnessed too much human cruelty in her professional life to be surprised by deliberate malice, but who remained outraged by each new example. "She did what? Sarah, tell me you're not serious. Tell me this is some kind of horrible nightmare." Rachel's breathing became audible as she processed the information. What kind of person destroys someone's wedding dress? What kind of mother-in-law sabotages her son's wedding? I described the morning's events in detail, including Vivian's justifications about family reputation and appropriate appearance standards. Rachel listened without interruption, occasionally making sounds that indicated she was taking notes, probably developing an action plan while I spoke. Her professional training had taught her to gather complete information before attempting to develop solutions, no matter how urgent the situation appeared. "Sarah, we have 6 hours to solve this problem. I'm calling in sick to work and driving over to your parents' house immediately. We're going to figure out what options exist, and we're going to ensure that you have something beautiful to wear when you marry Marcus." Rachel's voice carried the determined confidence that had made her an exceptional nurse and an invaluable friend. "Have you told Marcus what happened?" The question forced me to confront a decision I had been avoiding since discovering the destruction. Telling Marcus would require him to choose between supporting me and maintaining his relationship with his mother. Given his history of deferring to Vivian's preferences, I could not predict which option he would select. If he sided with his mother, either openly or through passive acceptance of her actions, it would fundamentally alter my understanding of our relationship and his commitment to our partnership. I haven't told him yet. I needed to understand my options before involving him in this crisis. The explanation sounded reasonable, but I recognized that my hesitation reflected deeper concerns about Marcus's potential response. "Rachel, what if he doesn't support me? What if he expects me to accept this and move forward without addressing what his mother did?" Rachel's response came without hesitation. "Then you'll know exactly what kind of marriage you're entering, and you can make an informed decision about whether that's what you want for your life. Sarah, this isn't just about a wedding dress. This is about whether Marcus will stand with you when his mother attacks your autonomy and dignity." Her words crystallized the real stakes involved in this crisis. The destroyed dress represented more than financial loss or wedding day stress. It was a test of the fundamental dynamics that would govern my marriage, revealing whether Marcus viewed me as an equal partner deserving of respect and protection, or as someone whose needs were secondary to his mother's preferences and family harmony. My mother returned to the bedroom carrying a cup of coffee and wearing the expression of someone who had spent 20 minutes on the phone delivering carefully controlled but unmistakably hostile messages. She sat beside me on the bed and examined the dress fragments with the systematic attention she applied to solving problems at her school. "I called your Aunt Linda, who owns the bridal shop downtown. She's opening the store early and pulling together every dress in your size that might work for this afternoon's ceremony." My mother's voice carried the practical efficiency that had made her an effective administrator, but I could detect the underlying anger that she was channeling into productive action. I also called Father Mackenzie at Sacred Heart to explain the situation and ask whether the ceremony time could be adjusted if necessary. The quick mobilization of resources reminded me that I possessed support systems beyond my immediate family. My mother's professional network, developed through decades of community involvement, included people who might be willing to provide emergency assistance for someone they respected. Rachel's medical training and crisis management experience offered strategic thinking capabilities that could help navigate the practical challenges of finding last-minute solutions. "Mom, what did Aunt Linda say about dress options? Is there anything available that might work for a wedding ceremony?" I attempted to focus on practical solutions, while my mind continued processing the emotional implications of Vivian's sabotage. "Linda has 3 dresses that should fit you, including one that arrived yesterday for a bride whose wedding was postponed due to a family emergency. She's calling the customer to request permission to loan it for today's ceremony, with professional cleaning and any necessary alterations completed before the original wedding date." My mother pulled out her phone to show me photographs that Linda had texted. She's also contacting her seamstress to see whether any of the dresses could be quickly altered to better match your preferred style. The images showed beautiful gowns that would certainly be appropriate for a wedding ceremony, though none captured the specific vision I had developed through months of planning and fittings. The emergency options reminded me that the dress, while important, was ultimately less significant than the commitment Marcus and I were making to each other. However, accepting a substitute also felt like allowing Vivian's sabotage to succeed in altering fundamental aspects of my wedding day. Rachel arrived 30 minutes later with her laptop, a thermos of coffee, and the focused energy she brought to managing medical emergencies. She spread out materials on my desk and began systematic research into options that extended beyond finding replacement dresses. Her approach reflected professional training in crisis management that emphasized understanding all available resources before committing to specific solutions. Sarah, I've been thinking about this situation from multiple angles. Yes, we need to address the immediate problem of finding something for you to wear today. But we also need to consider how this incident affects your relationship with Marcus and your long-term strategy for dealing with his mother. Rachel opened her laptop and showed me notes she had compiled during the drive to my parents' house. This is bigger than one wedding dress. Her systematic approach reminded me that my professional training as an event coordinator had equipped me with skills that could be applied to managing this personal crisis. I had successfully navigated numerous last-minute emergencies for clients, finding creative solutions when vendors failed to deliver services or unexpected problems threatened to derail carefully planned celebrations. The same strategic thinking and resource management capabilities could be applied to my own situation. Rachel, you're right that this extends beyond today's ceremony. But I also can't let Vivian's actions force me to postpone or fundamentally alter my wedding. That would give her exactly the outcome she wanted when she destroyed my dress. I stood and began pacing the room, finding that movement helped clarify my thinking. I need to find a way to address both the immediate practical problem and the longer-term relationship dynamics. My phone rang with a call from Marcus, whose timing suggested that someone had informed him about the morning's developments. I answered with reluctance, knowing that this conversation would reveal crucial information about his character and priorities that would influence every aspect of our future relationship. Sarah, my mother just called me. She said there was some kind of misunderstanding about your wedding dress, and that you were very upset about her attempts to help with family appropriateness standards. Marcus's voice carried confusion rather than outrage, suggesting that Vivian had successfully framed the situation as a reasonable intervention that I had misinterpreted due to emotional stress. The phrasing of his statement revealed that Vivian had already begun managing his perception of events, characterizing her deliberate destruction as a misunderstanding and my response as an overreaction. Her strategy demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how to manipulate family dynamics by controlling information and framing narratives to serve her preferred outcomes. Marcus, your mother didn't misunderstand anything. She deliberately cut my wedding dress into pieces because she disapproved of the style. She destroyed a $3,000 garment without permission and then tried to force me to wear her mother's dress instead. I kept my voice calm and factual, resisting the temptation to match the emotional intensity I felt with the volume and tone of my response. The silence that followed revealed Marcus processing information that contradicted his mother's version of events. I could almost hear him weighing competing narratives and deciding which account deserved his belief and support. The length of his pause suggested internal conflict between his natural inclination to trust his mother and growing awareness that her story might not be accurate. Sarah, that doesn't sound like something my mother would do. She can be particular about family standards, but deliberately destroying someone's property seems extreme even for her. Marcus's voice carried the tone of someone attempting to negotiate between conflicting accounts rather than someone expressing outrage at his mother's behavior. His response confirmed my fears about how this crisis would unfold. Marcus was not immediately expressing support for me or condemnation of his mother's actions. Instead, he was questioning my version of events and suggesting that I might be mischaracterizing his mother's behavior. His reaction indicated that family loyalty would take precedence over marital partnership when conflicts arose between his mother and his wife. Marcus, would you like to come to my parents' house and see the evidence for yourself? The destroyed dress is spread across my bedroom, and both my mother and I witnessed your mother's explanations for why she felt justified in cutting it up. I offered him the opportunity to verify my account, while recognizing that his willingness to investigate would reveal important information about his commitment to truth and fairness. I think there might be some emotional exaggeration happening here. Wedding day stress can make small problems seem catastrophic. Why don't I pick up the dress my mother offered to loan you, and we can sort out any remaining issues after the ceremony when everyone is calmer? Marcus's suggestion revealed his preferred approach to conflict resolution: minimize the problem, defer difficult conversations, and prioritize maintaining harmony over addressing underlying issues. The conversation crystallized my understanding of the choice I faced. I could accept Marcus's minimization of his mother's behavior and proceed with the wedding as if Vivian's sabotage were a minor misunderstanding that required no consequences or acknowledgement. This approach would preserve family peace and allow the ceremony to proceed on schedule, but it would also establish precedents for how future conflicts would be managed throughout our marriage. Alternatively, I could insist that Marcus acknowledge the reality of what his mother had done and demonstrate his commitment to protecting our relationship from her manipulation. This approach risked delaying or disrupting the wedding, but it would establish that our marriage would be based on mutual respect and shared decision-making rather than accommodation to his mother's preferences. Marcus, I need you to understand that this is not emotional exaggeration or wedding day stress. Your mother committed deliberate sabotage, and your response to her actions will determine whether I can trust you to stand with me when we face challenges in our marriage. I paused to let the gravity of my statement register. I need you to come here and see what actually happened before we discuss any solutions. The phone call ended with Marcus agreeing to drive to my parents' house, though his tone suggested reluctance rather than enthusiasm for confronting evidence that contradicted his mother's narrative. After ending the call, I realized that the next few hours would reveal not only whether I would have an appropriate dress for my wedding ceremony, but whether I would have a husband capable of the partnership I needed for a successful marriage. Rachel had been listening to my side of the conversation while continuing her research into emergency options. Her expression reflected both professional assessment of the situation and personal concern for my well-being as her friend. Sarah, based on what I just heard, you have two problems that need to be solved simultaneously. You need a dress for this afternoon's ceremony, and you need Marcus to demonstrate that he's capable of standing up to his mother when she attacks you. Rachel closed her laptop and turned to face me directly. The dress problem has multiple potential solutions. The Marcus problem is much more complicated and much more important for your future happiness. Her analysis forced me to confront the possibility that today's crisis might result in discovering that my relationship with Marcus was not strong enough to withstand his mother's manipulation. If he could not recognize and condemn deliberate sabotage of our wedding, how would he respond to more subtle but equally destructive interference in our future decisions about careers, finances, children, and other major life choices? The sound of car doors closing in the driveway announced Marcus's arrival, along with the approaching moment when I would learn whether my fiancé was capable of becoming the partner I needed for a successful marriage. Standing in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of his mother's calculated cruelty, I prepared to discover whether the man I loved possessed the courage and integrity necessary to protect our relationship from those who sought to control it. Marcus arrived at my parents' house with the tentative expression of someone hoping to mediate a misunderstanding rather than confront evidence of deliberate sabotage. He wore khakis and a polo shirt, his usual weekend attire, but his posture suggested discomfort with the situation he was being asked to address. His approach to the front door revealed hesitation, as if he hoped the problem might resolve itself before he reached the threshold where he would need to take a definitive position. My mother answered the door with the professional courtesy she reserved for difficult conversations with parents of students who had violated school policies. Her greeting was polite, but notably lacking the warmth she typically displayed toward Marcus, whom she had genuinely liked throughout our 2-year relationship. The subtle shift in her demeanor communicated disapproval without creating direct confrontation, a skill she had perfected through decades of managing complex interpersonal dynamics in educational settings. "Good morning, Marcus. Sarah is upstairs in her room with the evidence of what your mother did to her wedding dress. I think you need to see the situation for yourself before anyone discusses solutions or explanations." My mother's tone carried the authority of someone accustomed to requiring accountability from people who preferred to avoid uncomfortable truths. Marcus climbed the stairs with visible reluctance, each step slower than the last, as if hoping that delay might somehow change the reality he was approaching. When he entered my childhood bedroom and saw the systematic destruction spread across the comforter, his face went through a series of expressions that revealed his internal processing of information that contradicted his mother's narrative. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute while Marcus examined the cut fabric, touching pieces gently as if testing whether they might somehow reassemble themselves through careful handling. His inspection was thorough, methodical, suggesting that some part of his mind understood the significance of what he was witnessing, even as another part resisted accepting the implications. "Sarah, I can see that your dress has been damaged, but are you certain this was deliberate? Could there have been some kind of accident that my mother was trying to fix when you arrived?" Marcus's question demonstrated his continued commitment to finding explanations that would absolve his mother of intentional malice, even when confronted with evidence that made such interpretations impossible. Rachel, who had been observing the interaction with the clinical attention she applied to assessing patients in crisis, stepped forward with a piece of silk that showed clean, precise cuts made with sharp scissors. Her professional training in forensic nursing had taught her to analyze physical evidence systematically, and she applied those skills to documenting the deliberate nature of the destruction. "Marcus, these cuts were made with professional quality fabric scissors, applied with steady pressure along straight lines that required planning and intention. This level of systematic destruction cannot be accidental. Someone spent considerable time and effort ensuring that every piece was too small to be useful for repairs or alterations." Rachel's explanation carried the authority of expert analysis, delivered with the calm objectivity that made her testimony credible in legal proceedings. The forensic evidence forced Marcus to confront the reality that his mother had planned and executed deliberate sabotage rather than attempting to help with emergency repairs or style adjustments. His expression revealed the internal struggle between loyalty to the woman who had raised him and growing awareness that her actions were indefensible by any reasonable standard. Even if the damage was intentional, there might have been reasons that we don't understand. "My mother has very strong feelings about family reputation and appropriate presentation. Maybe she felt that the dress would cause problems that you hadn't considered." Marcus's continued attempts to rationalize his mother's behavior revealed his deep psychological investment in maintaining his idealized image of her character and motivations. My mother, who had been listening from the doorway, entered the room with the controlled anger of an educator who had witnessed too many examples of adults failing to protect children from harmful behavior. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize manipulation tactics and to respond with direct confrontation when circumstances required clarity rather than diplomacy. "Marcus, your mother destroyed property that did not belong to her because she disapproved of choices that were not hers to make. There is no justification for that behavior, regardless of her feelings about family reputation or appropriate presentation. An adult who cannot express disagreement without resorting to destruction and sabotage is not someone who should be making decisions that affect other people's lives." My mother's assessment carried the weight of professional expertise in managing difficult personalities and complex family dynamics. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of my Aunt Linda, who had driven directly from her bridal shop with 3 dress options draped carefully across her arm. Linda Martinez had operated Elegant Beginnings Bridal for 15 years, developing expertise in managing wedding day emergencies that ranged from last-minute alterations to complete dress replacements. Her presence brought practical solutions along with professional perspective on the situation we faced. "Sarah, honey, I brought the 3 dresses that should work for your size and the ceremony timeline. I've also called my seamstress, who can come here immediately if any adjustments are needed." Linda's efficiency reflected years of experience managing bridal crises, but her expression revealed that she understood the emotional significance of what had occurred beyond the practical challenge of finding replacement attire. Linda spread the dresses across my bed beside the destroyed fragments of my original gown, creating a stark visual contrast between deliberate destruction and community support. The emergency options were beautiful garments that would certainly be appropriate for a wedding ceremony, though none captured the specific vision I had developed through months of planning and personal investment. "Linda, thank you for dropping everything to help with this emergency. I know these are beautiful dresses, but I need to understand what happened here before we discuss replacement options." Marcus's response revealed his continued focus on managing the immediate practical problem rather than addressing the underlying behavior that had created the crisis. Linda examined the destroyed dress with professional expertise, running the silk fragments through her fingers and assessing the systematic nature of the cuts. Her 25 years in the bridal industry had exposed her to various forms of family drama and manipulation, but her expression suggested that she had rarely encountered sabotage this deliberate and comprehensive. Marcus, I've seen wedding dress emergencies caused by spills, tears, shipping delays, and manufacturing defects. I've never seen anything like this. Someone spent hours cutting this dress with professional scissors, ensuring that no piece was large enough to be salvaged or reconstructed. This was planned destruction, not an accident or a well-intentioned mistake. Linda's professional assessment corroborated Rachel's forensic analysis while adding industry expertise that made her conclusions difficult to challenge. The accumulation of expert testimony from multiple sources forced Marcus to confront evidence that made continued rationalization impossible. His mother had committed deliberate sabotage that demonstrated calculated cruelty and complete disregard for his fiancé's feelings and rights. The systematic nature of the destruction revealed planning and intention that could not be explained as impulsive behavior or well-meaning intervention. My phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Jennifer Walsh, my former professor from graduate school who had become a mentor and friend. The message was brief but significant. Sarah, I heard about the wedding dress situation through the community network. I have resources that might help, and I think this situation represents more than a single incident. Can we talk? The message surprised me because I had not contacted Dr. Walsh about the morning's crisis, yet somehow information had spread through informal channels that connected her to the situation. Dr. Walsh taught courses in organizational psychology and conflict resolution at the local university, specializing in family systems and power dynamics that affected personal and professional relationships. Dr. Walsh somehow heard about what happened and wants to discuss resources that might help. She mentioned that this situation might represent more than a single incident. I showed the text message to Rachel and my mother, both of whom recognized that Dr. Walsh's involvement suggested community awareness that extended beyond our immediate family circle. Rachel's expression brightened with recognition of strategic opportunity. Sarah, Dr. Walsh has connections throughout the professional community and experience dealing with manipulation tactics in family systems. Her perspective could be valuable for understanding the broader patterns of behavior you'll need to address if you marry into this family. My mother nodded agreement with Rachel's assessment. Jennifer has helped several families in our school district navigate complex situations involving controlling relatives and boundary violations. She understands how to document problematic behavior and develop strategies for protection without escalating conflicts unnecessarily. The suggestion that professional expertise might be available created new possibilities for addressing not only the immediate crisis, but the long-term challenge of managing Vivian's controlling behavior. Dr. Walsh's specialization in family systems could provide insights into patterns that I had observed but not fully understood during my relationship with Marcus. Marcus, who had been listening to the conversation with growing discomfort, interrupted with visible agitation. Sarah, this is getting out of hand. We're talking about calling in professional counselors and treating my mother like she's some kind of criminal. Can't we just focus on getting you a dress and moving forward with our wedding? His response revealed the fundamental disconnect between his desire to minimize the situation and my need to address the underlying dynamics that would affect our entire marriage. Marcus viewed the crisis as an isolated incident that could be resolved through practical solutions and resumed normalcy. I understood it as evidence of patterns that would continue throughout our relationship unless addressed directly. Marcus, your mother's behavior this morning represents a deliberate attack on my autonomy and our relationship. Ignoring it or treating it as a minor inconvenience will establish precedents for how she can treat me throughout our marriage. I need to understand whether you're capable of protecting our relationship from this kind of manipulation. My explanation attempted to clarify the stakes involved, while giving him the opportunity to demonstrate partnership rather than avoidance. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation with the arrival of Dr. Walsh, who had apparently driven directly to my parents' house after sending her text message. My mother went downstairs to greet her, returning moments later with a woman whose professional bearing and calm confidence immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was a petite woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked brown hair, and the kind of focused attention that made people feel heard and understood. She had built her reputation by helping families navigate complex dynamics involving manipulation, control, and boundary violations, often serving as an expert witness in legal proceedings that required analysis of psychological patterns and behavioral evidence. Sarah, I apologize for arriving uninvited, but several people in the community have reached out to me about your situation. I understand that you're dealing with deliberate sabotage of your wedding dress, and I wanted to offer support and perspective that might be helpful. Dr. Walsh's introduction was professional but warm, acknowledging the personal nature of the crisis, while offering expertise that could provide strategic guidance. Marcus looked uncomfortable with Dr. Walsh's presence, clearly recognizing that her involvement elevated the situation beyond family disagreement into the realm of professional intervention. His discomfort revealed his preference for handling the situation privately through informal negotiation, rather than addressing it systematically with expert guidance. Dr. Walsh, I appreciate your concern, but this is really a family matter that we can resolve internally. I don't think we need outside intervention for what is essentially a misunderstanding about appropriate wedding attire. Marcus's response demonstrated his continued commitment to minimizing his mother's behavior while avoiding accountability or consequences. Dr. Walsh examined the destroyed dress with the systematic attention she applied to analyzing evidence in family court cases. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize patterns of deliberate manipulation and control that often escalated over time when left unaddressed. Her expression suggested that she understood the significance of what she was observing. Marcus, I've worked with many families dealing with similar dynamics. What I see here is not a misunderstanding about wedding attire. This is systematic destruction designed to establish control and demonstrate consequences for making independent decisions. In my professional experience, this type of behavior rarely remains isolated and typically escalates when it achieves the desired results. Dr. Walsh's analysis carried the authority of clinical expertise combined with extensive case experience. The professional assessment forced everyone in the room to confront the reality that Vivian's sabotage represented more than wedding day stress or family disagreement. Dr. Walsh's expertise in recognizing manipulation patterns provided context that transformed an isolated incident into evidence of systematic controlling behavior that would likely continue and intensify if not addressed directly. Rachel stepped forward with her laptop, which displayed research she had conducted on strategies for managing controlling in-laws and protecting marital relationships from family manipulation. Her medical training had taught her to approach problems systematically, gathering information from multiple sources before developing comprehensive treatment plans. Dr. Walsh, I've been researching approaches for dealing with this situation, and everything I've found suggests that clear boundaries and consequences are essential for preventing escalation. Sarah needs support for establishing those boundaries, and Marcus needs to understand his role in protecting their relationship from his mother's interference. Rachel's presentation combined professional research with personal advocacy for her friend's well-being. Dr. Walsh reviewed Rachel's research with approval, recognizing evidence-based approaches that aligned with her own professional recommendations for similar situations. The collaboration between Rachel's crisis management expertise and Dr. Walsh's family systems knowledge created a foundation for strategic response that extended beyond emotional support to practical protection strategies. Sarah, you have excellent support from people who understand the complexity of what you're facing. The question now is whether Marcus is prepared to join that support system or continue trying to manage his mother's behavior through accommodation and avoidance. Dr. Walsh's assessment highlighted the choice that Marcus faced between supporting his fiancée or enabling his mother's controlling patterns. Marcus looked around the room at the assembled group of women who had mobilized to support me through this crisis, his expression revealing discomfort with being outnumbered and outmaneuvered by people with professional expertise and strong personal convictions. His preference for informal, private negotiation was clearly incompatible with the systematic approach that the situation required. The gathering in my childhood bedroom had evolved from a personal crisis into a community response that demonstrated the resources available when people with shared values recognized threats to someone they cared about. The professional expertise, practical support, and emotional solidarity created a foundation for addressing not only the immediate challenge of finding a wedding dress, but the longer-term work of establishing a marriage that would be protected from manipulation and control. The community response that had gathered in my childhood bedroom was interrupted by the sharp sound of expensive heels clicking across the hardwood floors downstairs, followed by Vivian's voice demanding immediate access to the family meeting that was proceeding without her authorization. Her tone carried the indignant authority of someone who expected to control all conversations that concerned her behavior, particularly those that included her son as a central participant. "Marcus, I need to speak with you immediately. There are serious misrepresentations being made about my attempts to help with appropriate family presentation standards." Vivian's voice carried up the staircase with the commanding presence that had dominated family dynamics throughout Marcus's childhood, and continued to influence his decision-making processes as an adult. Dr. Walsh's expression shifted to professional alertness, as she recognized the manipulation tactics that often accompanied controlling behavior when it faced organized resistance. Her clinical experience had taught her that individuals who habitually managed others through dominance and intimidation typically escalated their methods when confronted with evidence and professional intervention, rather than accepting accountability for their actions. "Sarah, this is exactly what I expected would happen when Vivian learned that her sabotage had attracted community attention and professional analysis. Controlling individuals rarely retreat when their behavior is exposed. Instead, they typically attempt to regain dominance by escalating their tactics and discrediting their opposition." Dr. Walsh's prediction was delivered with the calm authority of someone who had observed similar patterns numerous times throughout her career. Marcus looked torn between his ingrained habit of responding immediately to his mother's summons and growing awareness that leaving the current conversation would constitute abandoning his fiancée during a crisis that required his support and leadership. His internal conflict was visible in his posture and facial expressions as competing loyalties demanded contradictory responses to the situation developing around him. My mother moved toward the bedroom door with the protective instincts that had made her effective in managing difficult parents and administrators throughout her career in educational leadership. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize when situations required clear boundaries and direct confrontation rather than diplomatic negotiation or accommodation of unreasonable demands. "I will speak with Vivian and make clear that this conversation is proceeding without her input because her behavior created the crisis we are addressing. She is not entitled to participate in discussions about solutions to problems she deliberately caused." My mother's voice carried the institutional authority she had developed through decades of managing complex interpersonal dynamics in professional settings. Vivian's response was immediate and escalatory, her voice rising to ensure that her words carried throughout the house and established her emotional state as the primary concern that demanded attention from everyone present. The strategic use of emotional intensity to redirect focus from her behavior to her feelings represented a sophisticated manipulation technique that had clearly proven effective in previous family conflicts. "I refuse to be excluded from conversations about my son's wedding or subjected to character assassination by people who do not understand the responsibilities that come with maintaining family reputation and standards. Marcus, if you allow these people to vilify your mother without defending me, you will be demonstrating exactly the kind of weak character that makes appropriate guidance necessary." Vivian's statement combined emotional appeal with implicit threats about Marcus's worthiness and manhood if he failed to prioritize her feelings over all other considerations. Dr. Walsh moved closer to the window where she could observe the interaction developing downstairs while maintaining her professional analysis of the family dynamics that were being revealed through this crisis. Her expertise in recognizing manipulation patterns enabled her to predict how the confrontation would likely evolve and what responses would be most effective for protecting Sarah's interests and well-being. "Sarah, what you are witnessing is a classic example of how controlling individuals respond when their behavior faces systematic opposition. Vivian is attempting to re-establish dominance by making her emotional distress the central issue that requires immediate attention, thereby deflecting focus from her actions and their consequences." Dr. Walsh's analysis provided framework for understanding the psychological tactics that were being deployed to regain control of the situation. Rachel began documenting the escalating confrontation with her phone, recognizing that evidence might prove valuable if the situation continued to deteriorate or required future intervention by authorities or legal professionals. Her medical training had taught her the importance of maintaining accurate records during crisis situations that might have legal or professional implications. I am recording this interaction because controlling behavior often escalates when it encounters resistance, and we may need documentation to protect Sarah's interests if this situation requires formal intervention or legal action. Rachel's explanation was delivered with the clinical objectivity she applied to managing medical emergencies that required careful documentation and systematic response protocols. Marcus finally stood and moved toward the door, his decision apparently made to prioritize his mother's immediate emotional demands over the systematic analysis that was revealing uncomfortable truths about family dynamics, and his own role in enabling problematic behavior. His choice represented a crucial test of his capacity to support his future wife during conflicts with his family of origin. I need to go talk to my mother and help her understand what is happening here. She is clearly upset about being excluded from important conversations about our wedding, and I think there may be miscommunications that are making this situation worse than it needs to be. Marcus's explanation revealed his continued commitment to minimizing his mother's behavior while positioning himself as a mediator rather than an advocate for his fiancée's rights and dignity. Dr. Walsh intercepted Marcus before he reached the door, her professional training guiding her to provide direct feedback about the choice he was making and its likely consequences for his relationship with Sarah. Her expertise in family systems had taught her to recognize pivotal moments when individuals needed clear information about the implications of their decisions. Marcus, if you leave this room to comfort your mother after she deliberately destroyed your fiancé's wedding dress, you will be sending a clear message about your priorities and your capacity to protect your marriage from manipulation and control. Sarah needs to understand whether you are capable of supporting her when your mother attacks her autonomy and dignity. Dr. Walsh's intervention was delivered with professional directness that cut through the emotional complexity to focus on the fundamental choice that Marcus faced. The confrontation between Dr. Walsh's professional assessment and Marcus's family loyalty created a moment of clarity that revealed the true stakes involved in this crisis. This was not simply about finding a replacement wedding dress or managing wedding day stress. It was about establishing the fundamental dynamics that would govern the marriage and determine whether Sarah would have a partner capable of protecting their relationship from external manipulation. Marcus paused at the door, his internal conflict visible as he processed Dr. Walsh's assessment and recognized the accuracy of her prediction about the message his actions would communicate. The professional intervention had forced him to confront choices he had been attempting to avoid through accommodation and minimization of the underlying issues. Vivian's voice from downstairs became increasingly insistent as she realized that Marcus was not responding immediately to her summons, escalating her emotional appeals, and beginning to issue ultimatums about the consequences of his failure to prioritize her needs over all other considerations in this situation. Marcus, if you do not come down here immediately and put an end to this ridiculous persecution, I will have no choice but to conclude that you are not mature enough for marriage or capable of the kind of leadership that the Hartwell family expects from its men. Your father would never have allowed his wife's family to treat his mother with this kind of disrespect and hostility. Vivian's ultimatum combined emotional manipulation with threats about Marcus's masculinity and family standing if he failed to demonstrate absolute loyalty to her preferences. The manipulation tactics that Dr. Walsh had predicted were unfolding exactly as her professional experience suggested they would, providing real-time validation of her analysis while demonstrating the sophisticated psychological pressure that Marcus had been subjected to throughout his development. His difficulty in resisting these techniques reflected lifelong conditioning rather than character weakness or lack of love for Sarah. Aunt Linda, who had been observing the family dynamics with the practical wisdom that came from decades of managing complex wedding situations, stepped forward with a suggestion that addressed both the immediate crisis and the longer-term relationship challenges that were being revealed through this confrontation. Sarah, I think we need to consider whether this wedding should proceed as scheduled today, given what we are learning about the family dynamics you would be marrying into and Marcus's capacity to support you when conflicts arise with his mother. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is allow people the time they need to develop the courage and skills required for healthy partnership. Linda's suggestion was delivered with gentle compassion combined with practical wisdom about the realities of managing difficult family relationships. The proposal that the wedding might need to be postponed created a moment of stunned silence as everyone present processed the implications of this possibility. Postponement would represent a dramatic acknowledgement that the morning's crisis had revealed fundamental problems that could not be resolved through dress replacement and immediate accommodation of competing demands. Dr. Walsh nodded agreement with Linda's assessment, her professional expertise confirming that the family dynamics being revealed suggested serious concerns about the viability of a marriage that lacked adequate protection from manipulation and controlling behavior. Linda is correct that these dynamics represent more than wedding day stress or isolated incidents. Sarah is discovering information about her future family relationships that requires serious consideration before making permanent commitments. The patterns we are observing typically intensify after marriage when controlling individuals believe they have secured permanent access and influence. Dr. Walsh's clinical assessment supported the suggestion that postponement might be the most responsible approach to managing the crisis. Rachel moved closer to provide emotional support as Sarah processed the possibility that her wedding day might need to be canceled or significantly delayed due to circumstances completely beyond her control. The suggestion represented both devastating disappointment and potential relief from pressure to proceed, with commitments that might prove harmful to her long-term well-being and happiness. Sarah, I know this is not what you wanted to hear, but Linda and Dr. Walsh are right that the information you are learning today changes the fundamental circumstances of your decision to marry Marcus. You have discovered that his mother is willing to engage in deliberate sabotage, and you are seeing how he responds to her manipulation tactics when they conflict with your needs and rights. Rachel's support combined emotional validation with practical assessment of the strategic situation. Marcus, who had been standing frozen between competing demands from his mother downstairs and the professional intervention upstairs, finally turned back toward the group with an expression that revealed his recognition that simple solutions were not available for the complex problems that had been exposed through this crisis. Are you all seriously suggesting that we cancel our wedding because of a disagreement about appropriate dress styles? This seems like a massive overreaction to what should be a minor family adjustment that we can work through after the ceremony, when everyone has had time to calm down and gain perspective on the situation. Marcus's response demonstrated his continued inability to recognize the gravity of his mother's behavior or the significance of the choice he was being asked to make between supporting his fiancée and maintaining family harmony. Dr. Walsh approached Marcus with the patient directness she used when providing clinical feedback to individuals who were struggling to accept difficult realities about their relationships and behavioral patterns. Her professional training had taught her to remain objective and supportive, while delivering information that people needed to make informed decisions about their lives and relationships. Marcus, your mother did not disagree with a dress style. She deliberately destroyed property that did not belong to her in order to establish control over your wedding and demonstrate the consequences of making decisions without her approval. Your response to her behavior will establish precedents for how she can treat your wife throughout your marriage. Sarah needs to understand whether you are capable of protecting your relationship from this kind of manipulation before she commits to spending her life with you. Dr. Walsh's explanation was delivered with clinical precision that cut through emotional complexity to focus on the fundamental issues that required resolution. The professional assessment forced Marcus to confront the reality that his preferred approach of minimization and accommodation would not resolve the underlying dynamics that had been exposed through this crisis. His mother's behavior represented a deliberate attack on his future wife's autonomy, and his response would determine whether their marriage could survive the ongoing pressure from someone determined to maintain control over their relationship. Vivian's voice from downstairs reached a crescendo of emotional intensity as she realized that her traditional manipulation tactics were not achieving their desired results, leading her to escalate to more dramatic expressions of distress and victimization designed to compel immediate attention and accommodation of her demands. Marcus, I am having chest pains from the stress of being treated this way by people who should be grateful for my concern about family reputation and appropriate standards. If something happens to me because of this hostile persecution, it will be on your conscience for the rest of your life. Your father would never have allowed his wife's family to cause his mother this kind of emotional distress and potential health crisis. Vivian's escalation to claims of physical symptoms represented the final stage of manipulation, when other tactics failed to achieve desired results. Dr. Walsh recognized the escalation pattern and provided immediate guidance about how to respond to manipulation tactics that involved claims of medical crisis designed to compel compliance with demands that had been rejected through rational discussion and professional intervention. Sarah, Marcus, what you are hearing is a common escalation tactic when controlling behavior faces systematic resistance. The claims of chest pains and health crisis are designed to make you feel responsible for her emotional state and compel you to prioritize her feelings over addressing her destructive behavior. Responding to these tactics by providing the attention and accommodation they are designed to secure will reinforce their effectiveness and ensure their continued use. Dr. Walsh's guidance provided framework for understanding and responding appropriately to the psychological pressure being applied through claims of victimization and health crisis. The morning that had begun with the discovery of a destroyed wedding dress had evolved into a comprehensive revelation of family dynamics that would determine the trajectory of Sarah's entire future. Standing in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by evidence of deliberate sabotage and professional assessment of manipulation patterns, she faced the most important decision of her adult life about whether to proceed with marriage to someone who might not be capable of the partnership she needed for happiness and security. The decision to postpone the wedding crystallized in the aftermath of Vivian's escalating manipulation tactics and Marcus's continued inability to prioritize his fiancée's well-being over his mother's emotional demands. Dr. Walsh had provided the professional framework for understanding that proceeding with the ceremony under current circumstances would establish destructive patterns that would govern the entire marriage, while the community support network had demonstrated that Sarah possessed resources beyond her individual capacity to manage this complex situation. 3 weeks after what should have been her wedding day, Sarah found herself enrolled in Dr. Walsh's advanced course on family systems and boundary management, a decision that represented both personal healing and professional development. The university classroom provided neutral territory for exploring psychological concepts that directly applied to her recent experiences, while gaining the analytical tools necessary for navigating future challenges with confidence and strategic awareness. Sarah, your situation represents a textbook example of how controlling behavior operates within family systems and why traditional conflict resolution approaches prove inadequate when dealing with individuals who view relationships as opportunities for dominance rather than mutual support and partnership. Dr. Walsh's academic analysis provided clinical context for experiences that had felt intensely personal and emotionally overwhelming during the crisis period. The classroom discussions revealed that Sarah's experiences with Vivian followed predictable patterns that had been extensively documented in psychological literature about controlling personalities and family manipulation tactics. Learning that her situation was neither unique nor indicative of personal failure provided both validation and strategic insight for developing effective responses to future interactions. Rachel, who had requested permission to audit the course in order to support her friend while expanding her own professional expertise in crisis intervention, contributed medical perspectives on trauma recovery and resilience building that complemented the psychological frameworks being presented. Her nursing background provided practical knowledge about how emotional stress affected physical health and what recovery strategies proved most effective for individuals who had experienced betrayal and manipulation. The physical symptoms that Sarah experienced during the crisis period, including insomnia, digestive disruption, and anxiety attacks, represent normal biological responses to psychological manipulation and betrayal. Understanding these reactions as temporary and manageable, rather than permanent damage, is essential for complete recovery and future relationship success. Rachel's medical analysis provided reassurance that the intense physical responses to emotional manipulation would resolve through appropriate treatment and time. The academic environment allowed Sarah to process her experiences through intellectual analysis, rather than purely emotional reaction, creating psychological distance that enabled clearer thinking about strategic options for moving forward. The systematic approach to understanding manipulation tactics reduced the power these experiences held over her emotional well-being, while increasing her confidence in her ability to recognize and respond effectively to similar situations. Dr. Walsh assigned readings that explored successful strategies for establishing boundaries with controlling family members, including case studies of individuals who had successfully protected their marriages from external manipulation while maintaining appropriate relationships with extended family. The academic literature provided evidence-based approaches that had proven effective across diverse cultural and economic contexts. Sarah, your capacity to attract community support during the crisis demonstrates emotional intelligence and relationship-building skills that predict success in establishing healthy boundaries and protecting future partnerships from external interference. The professional intervention that occurred during your crisis was not accidental. It reflected your investment in authentic relationships with people who recognized your worth and were prepared to advocate for your well-being. Dr. Walsh's assessment highlighted strengths that Sarah had developed through years of professional and personal relationship building. The course curriculum included practical exercises in communication strategies, boundary setting, and conflict resolution that could be applied immediately to ongoing interactions with Marcus and his family. The academic framework provided structure for approaching these relationships strategically rather than reactively, increasing the likelihood of achieving desired outcomes while reducing emotional stress and conflict. Sarah began practicing assertiveness techniques that allowed her to communicate her needs and boundaries clearly without engaging in emotional manipulation or defensive responses that typically escalated conflicts rather than resolving them. This structured approach to communication provided alternatives to both aggressive confrontation and passive accommodation, creating middle ground that protected her interests while maintaining relationship possibilities. Marcus attended several class sessions as an invited observer, his presence representing tentative progress in his willingness to acknowledge that his family dynamics required professional intervention and systematic change, rather than continued accommodation of problematic behavior. His participation in the academic environment demonstrated openness to learning new approaches to managing his relationship with his mother, while protecting his partnership with Sarah. Marcus, your childhood conditioning makes it natural for you to prioritize your mother's emotional state over other considerations, but adult relationships require different skills and priorities that must be consciously developed through practice and professional guidance. Your willingness to participate in this learning process indicates potential for developing the capacity to protect your marriage from external manipulation. Dr. Walsh's assessment acknowledged the psychological challenges Marcus faced while affirming his capacity for growth and change. The academic setting provided Marcus with intellectual frameworks for understanding his mother's behavior patterns and their effects on his relationships, creating psychological distance from emotional responses that had previously prevented him from recognizing manipulation tactics or developing effective responses. The clinical analysis of family dynamics allowed him to evaluate his situation objectively rather than through the lens of childhood loyalty and guilt. Sarah observed Marcus's participation in class discussions with cautious optimism, noting his growing ability to identify manipulation tactics and his increased willingness to acknowledge that his mother's behavior represented problematic patterns rather than isolated incidents or reasonable responses to family stress. His intellectual understanding of psychological concepts provided foundation for behavioral changes that would be necessary for successful marriage. The learning process extended beyond psychological concepts to practical skills in event planning, crisis management, and community organizing that Sarah had discovered during the wedding crisis, but had not previously recognized as transferable professional assets. Her background in event coordination proved highly relevant to managing complex interpersonal situations that required systematic planning and resource coordination. Dr. Walsh encouraged Sarah to consider how her crisis management skills during the wedding situation demonstrated leadership capabilities that could be applied to broader community service and professional advancement. The ability to mobilize resources, coordinate multiple stakeholders, and maintain focus on long-term objectives under pressure represented valuable competencies that extended far beyond personal relationship management. Sarah, your response to the wedding dress crisis revealed sophisticated problem-solving abilities and emotional resilience that indicate potential for significant professional and personal achievement. Rather than viewing this experience as purely negative, consider how it provided opportunities to discover capabilities you might not have recognized under ordinary circumstances. Dr. Walsh's reframing of the crisis as a learning opportunity demonstrated how difficult experiences could contribute to personal development and increased self-awareness. The academic exploration of boundary setting and relationship protection attracted attention from other community members who were dealing with similar challenges, involving controlling relatives, manipulative colleagues, and toxic relationship dynamics. Sarah found herself serving as an informal mentor for individuals who recognized parallels between her situation and their own experiences with manipulation and control. The mentoring role provided opportunities to practice communication and leadership skills while contributing to others' well-being through sharing hard-won insights about recognizing manipulation tactics and developing effective responses. The teaching process reinforced Sarah's own learning, while building confidence in her ability to navigate complex interpersonal challenges successfully. Maria Santos, the social worker who had provided support during the wedding crisis, invited Sarah to co-facilitate workshops on healthy relationship dynamics and boundary setting for community organizations that served individuals recovering from domestic violence and emotional abuse. The professional collaboration provided structured opportunities to apply academic learning to real-world situations, while building expertise in areas that had direct relevance to Sarah's personal experiences. Sarah, your combination of personal experience with manipulation tactics and academic study of family systems creates unique qualifications for helping others who are struggling with similar challenges. Your credibility comes from having successfully navigated these difficulties while developing professional expertise in understanding and addressing them systematically. Maria's assessment highlighted how Sarah's crisis experience had created foundation for meaningful professional contribution in areas that served vulnerable populations. The workshop facilitation required Sarah to articulate complex psychological concepts in accessible language, while providing practical guidance for individuals whose educational backgrounds and life experiences differed significantly from her own. The teaching responsibility pushed her to deepen her understanding of the material while developing communication skills that proved valuable in both professional and personal contexts. Marcus began attending the community workshops as a participant rather than an observer, his presence indicating commitment to understanding manipulation dynamics from multiple perspectives rather than focusing exclusively on his own family situation. His willingness to learn from individuals who had experienced different forms of controlling behavior demonstrated intellectual humility and genuine commitment to developing healthier relationship patterns. The community workshop participation exposed Marcus to stories of successful boundary setting and relationship protection that provided models for addressing his situation with his mother while maintaining appropriate family connections. The diverse perspectives helped him understand that protecting his marriage from manipulation was not equivalent to abandoning his mother or rejecting family relationships entirely. Sarah observed Marcus's interaction with workshop participants who had successfully established boundaries with controlling family members, noting his growing confidence in applying communication techniques and boundary-setting strategies to his own relationships. The practical examples and peer support provided encouragement for taking action steps that had previously felt too risky or emotionally difficult. Dr. Walsh assigned a capstone project that required Sarah to develop a comprehensive plan for establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries with Vivian, while protecting her relationship with Marcus from ongoing manipulation attempts. The academic framework provided structure for strategic thinking that extended beyond immediate crisis management to long-term relationship sustainability. The project required analysis of Vivian's behavioral patterns, assessment of Marcus's capacity for change and growth, evaluation of available support systems, and development of communication strategies that would be effective for managing ongoing interactions. The systematic approach provided confidence in decision-making while reducing emotional reactivity that typically interfered with clear thinking during stressful situations. Research for the project revealed extensive literature on successful strategies for managing relationships with narcissistic and controlling personalities, including case studies of marriages that had survived and thrived despite ongoing pressure from manipulative extended family members. The academic evidence provided hope that positive outcomes were possible while highlighting the importance of consistent boundary enforcement and professional support. The learning phase concluded with Sarah's recognition that the wedding dress crisis, while initially devastating, had provided opportunities for personal growth, professional development, and relationship clarification that would serve her throughout her life. The academic study had transformed painful experiences into valuable insights while building capabilities for future challenge management. Marcus's parallel learning process had equipped him with psychological frameworks for understanding his family dynamics and practical skills for protecting his relationship with Sarah from his mother's manipulation tactics. His commitment to continued learning and professional support indicated potential for successful marriage based on mutual respect and shared responsibility for relationship protection. The community connections developed through workshop participation and mentoring activities had created an ongoing support network of individuals who understood the challenges involved in maintaining healthy relationships while managing pressure from controlling personalities. The collective wisdom and mutual support provided resources that extended far beyond professional services or family relationships. Dr. Walsh's final assessment confirmed that both Sarah and Marcus had developed the knowledge, skills, and support systems necessary for establishing a marriage that could withstand external pressure while maintaining appropriate boundaries with extended family members. The academic framework provided foundation for ongoing growth and adaptation as circumstances changed over time. Standing at the conclusion of an intensive learning period that had transformed a personal crisis into professional expertise and community connection, Sarah realized that postponing the wedding had been the most important decision of her adult life. The delay had provided opportunities for growth and preparation that would serve her throughout her marriage, while building capabilities for contributing to others' well-being through sharing hard-won wisdom about relationship protection and boundary management. The destroyed wedding dress had become a symbol not of victimization and loss, but of the courage required to prioritize long-term relationship health over short-term convenience and social expectations. The crisis had revealed both the challenges and the resources available for building authentic partnerships based on mutual respect, rather than manipulation and control. 6 months after the postponed wedding, Sarah and Marcus sat across from Dr. Walsh in her private practice office, surrounded by whiteboards covered with relationship diagrams, boundary charts, and communication protocols they had developed through intensive couples counseling sessions. The therapeutic work had transformed their understanding of healthy partnership dynamics, while providing practical frameworks for protecting their relationship from external manipulation and establishing sustainable patterns for managing family interactions. The strategic planning process had begun with comprehensive assessment of their individual strengths, relationship assets, and potential vulnerability areas that required specific attention and protection strategies. Dr. Walsh had guided them through systematic analysis of their communication patterns, conflict resolution skills, and capacity for maintaining boundaries under pressure from family members who were invested in preserving problematic dynamics. Sarah and Marcus, the work you have completed over the past 6 months demonstrates significant growth in your understanding of healthy relationship principles and your commitment to protecting your partnership from external interference. The strategic plan we developed today will provide the framework for implementing these insights in practical situations while maintaining flexibility for adapting to changing circumstances. Quote, Dr. Walsh's assessment reflected professional confidence in their readiness to proceed with marriage, based on solid preparation and realistic planning. Marcus had completed individual therapy sessions focused on understanding his childhood conditioning and developing independence from his mother's emotional manipulation tactics. The therapeutic work had required him to examine painful patterns of guilt, obligation, and fear that had governed his decision-making throughout his adult life, while learning to prioritize his own values and relationship commitments over family pressure. The most difficult aspect of this process has been recognizing how deeply my mother's control tactics affected my ability to make independent decisions and trust my own judgment about what constitutes appropriate behavior in relationships. Learning to distinguish between genuine concern and manipulative interference required professional guidance, because the patterns were so ingrained that they felt normal and justified. Marcus's reflection demonstrated genuine insight into psychological dynamics that had previously operated below his conscious awareness. Sarah had used the therapeutic process to address trauma responses from the wedding dress incident, while building confidence in her ability to recognize manipulation tactics and respond effectively without becoming emotionally overwhelmed or reactive. The work had included processing feelings of betrayal and violation, while developing resilient strategies for managing ongoing interactions with individuals who might attempt similar controlling behaviors. My biggest learning has been understanding that protecting myself from manipulation is not selfish or mean, but essential for maintaining healthy relationships with everyone in my life. Setting clear boundaries actually creates more authentic connections because interactions are based on mutual respect rather than fear, guilt, or obligation. Sarah's insight reflected the therapeutic transformation that had occurred through systematic work on boundary development and self-advocacy skills. The strategic planning session focused on developing specific protocols for managing interactions with Vivian that would protect their marriage while maintaining appropriate family connections. The approach required balancing respect for family relationships with firm enforcement of behavioral expectations that supported rather than undermined their partnership. Dr. Walsh had prepared detailed assessment tools that evaluated different scenarios they might encounter with Vivian, ranging from subtle manipulation attempts to more dramatic interventions similar to the wedding dress incident. Each scenario included multiple response options with analysis of likely consequences and effectiveness for achieving their relationship protection objectives. The key principle underlying all strategic decisions is that behavior which undermines your marriage cannot be tolerated regardless of who engages in it or what justifications are offered. This does not require hostility or punishment, but it does require consistent consequences that demonstrate your commitment to protecting your partnership above all other considerations. Dr. Walsh's guidance provided clear priorities for decision-making during complex family situations. The planning process included detailed communication scripts for different types of conversations they might need to have with Vivian, including boundary-setting discussions, consequence enforcement interactions, and ongoing relationship maintenance exchanges. The prepared language provided confidence for managing difficult conversations without becoming defensive or allowing manipulation tactics to derail productive dialogue. Sarah and Marcus practiced role-playing scenarios where one of them portrayed Vivian using various manipulation techniques while the other implemented their planned responses. The rehearsal process built muscle memory for maintaining boundaries under emotional pressure, while identifying areas where additional preparation or professional support might be necessary. The practice sessions reveal how automatically I still respond to guilt and obligation tactics, even though I understand intellectually that these are manipulation strategies designed to control my behavior. The strategic planning provides alternative responses that feel authentic to my values while protecting my relationship with Sarah. Marcus's observation demonstrated ongoing awareness of psychological patterns that required conscious effort to modify. The strategic plan included specific criteria for determining when professional intervention would be necessary if Vivian's behavior escalated beyond levels they could manage through direct communication and boundary enforcement. The framework provided clear guidelines for recognizing situations that required external support rather than attempting to address all challenges through individual effort. Dr. Walsh had prepared comprehensive documentation of Vivian's behavioral patterns based on the wedding dress incident and subsequent interactions, creating a professional record that could be used for legal protection if harassment or property destruction occurred again. The documentation strategy provided both practical protection and psychological reassurance that their concerns were being taken seriously by qualified professionals. The evidence-based approach to documenting problematic behavior serves multiple purposes, including validation of your experiences, protection from gaslighting attempts, and practical resource for legal intervention if circumstances require formal protection measures. Maintaining accurate records demonstrates that your concerns are based on observable patterns rather than emotional overreaction or misunderstanding. Dr. Walsh's explanation highlighted the importance of systematic documentation for long-term relationship protection. The planning process addressed financial considerations related to wedding expenses, future family obligations, and potential legal costs if Vivian's behavior required formal intervention. The comprehensive approach included budgeting for ongoing therapy sessions, legal consultation fees, and emergency funds for managing crisis situations that might arise despite preventative measures. Sarah and Marcus had established joint financial accounts that provided independence from family financial support or interference, eliminating potential leverage that Vivian might attempt to use for controlling their decisions. The financial planning reflected their commitment to autonomous decision-making, based on their own values and priorities, rather than external pressure or manipulation. Financial independence is essential for maintaining relationship autonomy, because controlling individuals often use money as a tool for influencing decisions and maintaining access to situations where they can continue problematic behavior. Establishing our own financial foundation eliminates those pressure points while demonstrating our commitment to adult partnership. Sarah's analysis reflected sophisticated understanding of how financial dynamics intersected with relationship control issues. The strategic plan included specific goals for their redesigned wedding ceremony, which would take place in 8 months with careful attention to protecting the celebration from interference or disruption. The planning process incorporated lessons learned from the original crisis while creating meaningful traditions that honored their values and relationship priorities. Dr. Walsh had recommended a smaller, more intimate ceremony that would include only people who had demonstrated genuine support for their relationship and respect for their autonomy. The guest list reflected strategic thinking about creating a supportive environment for their celebration, while minimizing opportunities for manipulation or conflict during their special day. The revised wedding planning demonstrates how crisis experiences can lead to more authentic and meaningful celebrations when couples use challenges as opportunities to clarify their values and priorities. Your ceremony will reflect genuine relationship foundations rather than social expectations or family pressure. Dr. Walsh's perspective reframed the postponement as beneficial preparation rather than unfortunate delay. The venue selection process had included security considerations and backup plans for managing potential disruption attempts, reflecting realistic assessment of ongoing family dynamics while maintaining optimism about celebrating their commitment in a protected and supportive environment. The practical planning demonstrated integration of therapeutic insights with event coordination expertise. Sarah's professional background in event management had proven invaluable for developing comprehensive contingency plans that addressed various scenarios while maintaining focus on the celebratory aspects of their wedding day. The strategic approach balanced preparation for potential challenges with commitment to creating joyful memories and meaningful experiences. My event planning experience taught me that successful celebrations require both careful preparation and flexibility for managing unexpected situations. Applying those professional skills to my own wedding, with the additional consideration of family dynamics and relationship protection, has created confidence that we can have a beautiful ceremony while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Sarah's integration of professional and personal expertise demonstrated how skills developed in one area could be transferred to enhance other aspects of life. The planning session concluded with development of specific implementation timelines for different aspects of their strategy, including gradual boundary introduction with Vivian, ongoing therapy schedules, financial planning milestones, and wedding preparation phases. The systematic approach provided structure for managing complex objectives while maintaining motivation through achievement of intermediate goals. Marcus had accepted responsibility for initiating difficult conversations with his mother about behavioral expectations and consequences, recognizing that these communications needed to come from him rather than Sarah in order to be effective. His willingness to take leadership in managing his family relationships demonstrated significant growth in his capacity for protecting their partnership. The hardest part of this process has been accepting that loving my mother does not require accepting her behavior when it harms my relationship with Sarah. Learning to separate love from enablement has been painful but essential for developing the capacity to be a good husband while maintaining appropriate family connections. Marcus's insight reflected emotional maturity that had developed through therapeutic work and strategic planning. The strategic framework included ongoing assessment protocols for evaluating the effectiveness of their approaches and making adjustments based on results and changing circumstances. The adaptive planning process reflected realistic understanding that relationship protection required continuous attention and refinement rather than one-time intervention. Dr. Walsh had provided referrals to legal professionals who specialized in family harassment cases, ensuring that Sarah and Marcus had access to appropriate expertise if Vivian's behavior required formal intervention beyond therapeutic and personal boundary-setting approaches. The professional network provided confidence that they possessed resources for managing escalation, while hoping that such measures would prove unnecessary. The comprehensive support network you have developed, including therapeutic, legal, and community resources, provides multiple options for addressing challenges while maintaining focus on your primary objective of building a healthy marriage. The strategic planning process demonstrates that you have moved beyond crisis management to proactive relationship protection. Dr. Walsh's assessment confirmed their readiness to proceed with marriage based on solid preparation and realistic planning. The session concluded with scheduling for ongoing check-in appointments that would provide professional support for implementation of their strategic plan, while maintaining accountability for achieving their relationship protection objectives. The continued therapeutic involvement reflected commitment to long-term success, rather than assuming that strategic planning alone would be sufficient for managing complex family dynamics. Sarah and Marcus left Dr. Walsh's office with comprehensive documentation of their strategic plan, including communication scripts, boundary enforcement protocols, crisis management procedures, and implementation timelines. The materials provided practical guidance for managing daily interactions while maintaining focus on their larger relationship objectives. The strategic planning process had transformed their understanding of marriage preparation, from focusing primarily on wedding details and romantic feelings, to developing practical skills and support systems for protecting their partnership from external interference. The professional guidance had provided confidence that they possessed the knowledge and resources necessary for building a successful marriage, despite ongoing family challenges. Standing in the parking lot outside Dr. Walsh's office, reviewing the strategic plan they had developed together, Sarah and Marcus recognized that the wedding dress crisis had ultimately led them to preparation and insights that would serve them throughout their marriage. The destroyed dress had become a symbol of their commitment to protecting their relationship from manipulation, while building authentic partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. The comprehensive planning process demonstrated that successful marriages required more than love and good intentions. They needed strategic thinking, professional support, clear boundaries, and systematic approaches to managing challenges that threatened relationship health. The academic and therapeutic foundation they had built provided confidence for moving forward with their wedding celebration, while maintaining vigilance about ongoing relationship protection requirements. The first significant test of Sarah and Marcus's strategic plan occurred 2 months into implementation, when Vivian attempted to organize a family gathering ostensibly to, quote, heal the wounds caused by what she characterized as misunderstandings during the previous wedding crisis. The invitation arrived via certified mail, accompanied by detailed instructions about appropriate attire, conversation topics to avoid, and expectations for demonstrating family unity and respect for traditional values. The formal invitation represented exactly the type of manipulation tactic that Dr. Walsh had predicted Vivian would employ, once she recognized that direct confrontation had proven ineffective for maintaining control over Marcus's relationship decisions. The certified delivery method was designed to create urgency and importance, while the detailed instructions demonstrated her continued assumption that she possessed authority to dictate behavior for adult family members. Sarah and Marcus reviewed the invitation together using the assessment framework they had developed during their strategic planning sessions. The document revealed multiple manipulation techniques operating simultaneously, including false reconciliation offers, implicit threats about family consequences for noncompliance, and positioning of Vivian as the reasonable party seeking to repair damage caused by others. Unreasonable behavior. This invitation perfectly demonstrates the psychological tactics we studied with Dr. Walsh. Vivian is positioning herself as the magnanimous family matriarch, offering forgiveness while simultaneously establishing conditions that require us to accept her authority and apologize for defending our boundaries during the wedding dress incident. Marcus's analysis reflected significant growth in his ability to recognize manipulation patterns rather than responding with automatic compliance based on childhood conditioning. The strategic response required careful balance between maintaining family relationships and refusing to enable problematic behavior patterns. Their plan included attending the gathering while implementing specific communication protocols that would demonstrate their commitment to respectful interaction, without accepting inappropriate control or manipulation attempts. Sarah prepared for the family meeting by reviewing the boundary enforcement techniques they had practiced during therapy sessions, including methods for redirecting inappropriate conversations, responding to guilt-based manipulation attempts, and maintaining calm assertiveness when pressured to accept unacceptable behavior or apologize for reasonable actions. The key objective for this interaction is demonstrating that we can maintain appropriate family relationships while refusing to enable manipulation tactics. Success means completing the visit without compromising our boundaries or agreeing to behavior modification that would undermine our marriage protection strategies. Sarah's approach reflected professional event management skills applied to complex interpersonal dynamics with clear success metrics and contingency planning. Marcus had prepared specific language for addressing his mother's attempts to relitigate the wedding dress incident or extract apologies for consequences she had experienced as a result of her destructive behavior. The prepared responses balanced acknowledgement of her feelings with firm refusal to accept responsibility for problems she had created through her own choices and actions. The family gathering took place at Vivian's house, a setting that provided her with maximum psychological advantage through familiar surroundings and control over environmental factors including seating arrangements, meal timing, and guest list composition. The home represented decades of successful family control tactics that had established her authority over major decisions affecting family members, lives, and relationships. Vivian greeted them at the front door wearing formal attire that communicated special occasion significance while her expression conveyed martyred suffering designed to elicit guilt and immediate accommodation of her emotional needs. The performance represented sophisticated manipulation technique that combined verbal and nonverbal communication to establish the family dynamics she preferred for managing the interaction. Marcus, Sarah, I am so grateful that you have chosen to prioritize family healing over personal grievances. This gathering represents an opportunity for all of us to move forward from the unfortunate misunderstandings that occurred during your wedding planning period. Vivian's opening statement contained multiple manipulation elements, including false gratitude, minimization of serious behavioral problems, and positioning of their boundary enforcement as personal grievances rather than appropriate responses to destructive actions. Marcus responded using the communication scripts they had developed during therapy sessions, acknowledging her invitation while refusing to accept her characterization of the wedding dress incident as a misunderstanding rather than deliberate sabotage that had required professional intervention and relationship repair work. Mother, we appreciate your invitation to discuss family relationships. However, we need to be clear that the wedding dress incident was not a misunderstanding but a deliberate action that caused significant harm and required extensive therapeutic work to address. We are committed to maintaining family relationships while ensuring that similar incidents do not occur in the future. Marcus's response demonstrated significant growth in his ability to communicate directly with his mother while maintaining respectful tone and clear boundaries. The prepared response created immediate tension as Vivian recognized that her preferred narrative about misunderstandings and overreactions was being challenged by clear acknowledgement of her behavior and its consequences. Her facial expression revealed surprise and displeasure at encountering organized resistance rather than the compliance and accommodation she had expected from the family gathering strategy. Sarah observed the interaction with clinical attention, noting how Vivian's manipulation tactics escalated when her initial approaches proved ineffective. The systematic documentation of behavioral patterns provided both validation of their strategic planning accuracy and evidence for future reference if additional professional intervention became necessary. Vivian, we understand that addressing this situation is uncomfortable, but minimizing what occurred or expecting us to pretend it did not happen would prevent authentic family relationship healing. We are prepared to work toward improved relationships based on mutual respect and clear behavioral expectations moving forward. Sarah's contribution balanced empathy for family dynamics with firm refusal to enable continued problematic behavior through avoidance or accommodation. The family gathering continued for 2 hours, during which Sarah and Marcus successfully implemented their boundary maintenance strategies while demonstrating respectful engagement with extended family members who had not been involved in the wedding dress incident. Their ability to distinguish between appropriate family interaction and manipulation attempts created positive connections while refusing to compromise their relationship protection objectives. Vivian made several attempts to extract apologies or acknowledgement that their response to her behavior had been excessive, each effort met with calm redirection to focus on future behavioral expectations rather than relitigating past incidents. The consistent response pattern demonstrated their commitment to moving forward while maintaining clear accountability for actions and consequences. Mother, We are not interested in continuing to discuss the past incident, but we are committed to establishing clear expectations for future interactions that support healthy family relationships. Our marriage is our priority, and family connections that respect our partnership are welcome, while interference or manipulation will not be tolerated. Marcus's statement represented the culmination of months of therapeutic work in developing independence from his mother's emotional control, while maintaining appropriate family connections. The gathering concluded with Vivian's grudging acceptance that her traditional manipulation tactics would not achieve their intended results with Sarah and Marcus's new approach to family dynamics. While she did not explicitly acknowledge wrongdoing or commit to behavioral changes, her subdued response indicated recognition that the power dynamics had shifted in ways that required adjustment of her strategies. The successful navigation of their first major test created significant confidence in their ability to manage ongoing family interactions while protecting their marriage from external interference. The experience validated their strategic planning accuracy, while demonstrating that professional preparation had equipped them with effective tools for managing complex psychological manipulation attempts. Sarah and Marcus left Vivian's house feeling victorious not because they had defeated or humiliated anyone, but because they had successfully maintained their boundaries while demonstrating respect for family relationships. The balanced approach had proven effective for achieving their objectives without escalating conflict or creating unnecessary drama that could complicate future interactions. The drive home provided opportunity for processing their experience and evaluating the effectiveness of different aspects of their strategic plan. The systematic review revealed areas where their preparation had proven accurate and helpful, as well as elements that required modification based on actual implementation experience. The most significant success was maintaining our calm and focus throughout the interaction, without becoming defensive or reactive to manipulation attempts. The preparation gave us confidence to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally, which prevented escalation while clearly communicating our boundaries and expectations. Sarah's assessment highlighted the value of professional guidance and systematic preparation for managing complex interpersonal challenges. Marcus experienced particular satisfaction in his ability to communicate directly with his mother without triggering the guilt, anxiety, and automatic compliance responses that had governed his behavior throughout his childhood and early adult development. The therapeutic work had created psychological foundation for independent decision-making based on his own values rather than fear of maternal disapproval. The most important personal victory was recognizing manipulation tactics as they occurred and responding with appropriate boundaries rather than automatic accommodation. This represents fundamental change in my relationship with my mother that will benefit every aspect of my life, including my capacity to be a good husband, and eventually a good father who can protect his own family from similar manipulation. Marcus's insight demonstrated integration of therapeutic learning with practical application that extended beyond immediate relationship protection to broader life skills and future family development. The successful family gathering attracted positive attention from extended family members who had observed the interaction and expressed privately to Sarah and Marcus their respect for the mature and respectful way they had managed a difficult situation. The validation from neutral family members provided external confirmation that their approach had been appropriate and effective, rather than harsh or unreasonable. Dr. Walsh's assessment during their follow-up therapy session confirmed that their performance during the family gathering demonstrated successful implementation of the strategic plan while maintaining psychological health and relationship integrity. The professional validation provided confidence for continuing their approach, while making minor adjustments based on implementation experience. Sarah and Marcus, your ability to maintain boundaries while demonstrating respect for family relationships represents significant therapeutic success and indicates readiness for managing ongoing challenges without intensive professional support. You have developed the skills and confidence necessary for protecting your marriage while maintaining appropriate extended family connections. Dr. Walsh's assessment confirmed their growth while establishing foundation for graduated independence from intensive therapeutic intervention. The victory celebration that evening included dinner at their favorite restaurant, followed by discussion of wedding planning details that had been postponed while they addressed family dynamics and relationship foundation issues. The return to positive future planning reflected their confidence that the marriage would be protected from external interference through effective boundary management and strategic communication. Sarah's professional colleagues had observed her growth in confidence and leadership skills that had developed through managing the family crisis and implementing systematic approaches to complex interpersonal challenges. The transferable skills had enhanced her career advancement opportunities while building reputation for sophisticated problem-solving abilities under pressure. The crisis management and strategic planning skills I developed through this family situation have proven valuable for managing complex professional projects and difficult colleague relationships. Learning to recognize manipulation tactics and respond effectively has improved every aspect of my professional interaction while building confidence for taking on larger leadership responsibilities. Sarah's recognition of professional skill transfer demonstrated how personal growth could contribute to career advancement and broader life success. The community support network that had developed during the wedding dress crisis continued providing resources and encouragement as Sarah and Marcus implemented their strategic plan for ongoing family relationship management. The extended support system included professional, personal, and community connections that understood their challenges and celebrated their successes. Maria Santos invited Sarah to present their boundary management strategies at a regional conference on healthy family dynamics, providing opportunity to share their experience while contributing to professional education for social workers and family therapists. The speaking engagement represented recognition of expertise that had developed through combining personal experience with professional learning and successful implementation. The presentation preparation required Sarah to articulate their systematic approach to boundary setting and relationship protection in ways that could be understood and applied by professionals working with diverse populations facing similar challenges. The teaching responsibility deepened her understanding of the principles, while building confidence in her expertise and leadership capabilities. Marcus's participation in the conference presentation demonstrated his commitment to helping others benefit from their experience, while publicly acknowledging the importance of professional guidance for developing healthy family relationship skills. His willingness to share personal struggles and growth reflected emotional maturity and community service orientation that had developed through the therapeutic process. The first major victory in implementing their strategic plan had created foundation for continued success, while building confidence in their ability to protect their marriage from external manipulation without sacrificing appropriate family connections. The balanced approach provided model for addressing future challenges while maintaining focus on their primary objective of building healthy partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. Standing together after successfully navigating their first significant test of the strategic plan they had developed through months of professional guidance and systematic preparation, Sarah and Marcus recognized that the wedding dress crisis had ultimately led them to capabilities and insights that would serve them throughout their marriage and enable them to contribute meaningfully to helping others facing similar challenges. The success of Sarah and Marcus's boundary enforcement during the family gathering triggered an escalation in Vivian's manipulation tactics that demonstrated the sophisticated psychological warfare capabilities Dr. Walsh had warned them to expect when controlling behavior encountered systematic resistance. Rather than accepting the new relationship dynamics, Vivian launched a comprehensive campaign designed to undermine their marriage preparation, while recruiting allies who could apply pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. The first indication of intensified opposition arrived through Marcus's workplace, where Vivian had contacted his law firm's senior partners to express concerns about his emotional stability and judgment during what she characterized as a family crisis, requiring professional intervention. Her strategic approach targeted his professional reputation and career advancement prospects, understanding that financial pressure and workplace stress could destabilize his commitment to the boundary enforcement strategies they had developed. Sarah, I received a call from the managing partner requesting a private meeting to discuss what he described as family concerns that might affect my professional performance and client relationships. My mother somehow obtained direct contact information for firm leadership and presented herself as a worried parent seeking help for a son who was making poor decisions under the influence of manipulative relationships. Marcus's voice carried the strain of recognizing that his professional career had become another battlefield in their ongoing conflict with his mother's controlling behavior. The workplace intervention represented sophisticated understanding of how professional pressure could be leveraged to achieve personal control objectives. Vivian had researched the law firm's culture and leadership structure, identifying decision-makers who might be sympathetic to maternal concerns, while positioning herself as a respectable family member seeking assistance, rather than as someone engaging in harassment or manipulation tactics. Dr. Walsh's assessment during their emergency consultation session confirmed that workplace interference represented predictable escalation from someone whose traditional manipulation methods had proven ineffective. The professional intervention violated ethical boundaries while demonstrating the lengths to which controlling individuals would go to maintain dominance over adult children's relationship decisions. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.